TRS. Let's check in with Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist. You read him all the time, STLtoday.com, and he's with us every Tuesday and Thursday. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Hey, Tony.
So Darlene Green is announcing her presence with authority. Where does she think she gets the authority to withhold this money after they've already started work on the Scottrade Center?
Well, the various lawsuits going on with the Scottrade Center are awfully interesting because they get to so many different issues. Darlene Green clearly plays a role. She's the controller. She ultimately has to sign off on the bonds. And she has said for months now, I wrote a column about it 2 months ago, saying she's not going to sign them. What is interesting and what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm working on a column on this, is that the city has been trying to, and the Blues have been trying to do a runaround around controller Darlene Green and try to get Tashara Jones, the treasurer, to use her authority to sell the bonds. And that process is also caught up in a bunch of political and legal intrigue, which your listeners will enjoy reading about in my column sometime this weekend. But the fact is, this issue has been litigated before. The controller of the city of St. Louis, whether it's good government or bad, has the authority to withhold her signature if she thinks that selling those bonds is going to be damaging to the city's credit.
Well, how does it work? How does a city function if the aldermen sign off on it and the mayor signs off on it and they've already started construction at the Scottrade Center and one person has the purse strings to say no?
Well, they need to talk to that one person before they pass something. I mean, that's part of the process. The city has a process, and it's been part of the process for a long time. Here's the other interesting question: if the Scottrade Center is the public building that the Blues and the Blues supporters and the folks in the city who passed this legislation believe it is, if it is indeed a public building owned by the city of St. Louis, and we all know the construction's already going on, where was the bidding process? Have you ever been involved in your memory banks of a public building being remodeled in which there wasn't public bidding and open bidding? There's been no bidding. The Blues are just doing the work. So that's the next step in this legal roulette that's being played. If indeed it's a public building, why has there not been any public bidding on this process?
All valid questions, Tony. Why wasn't this brought up before the legislation was passed and signed off on and everything else?
Because that's not how we do things in St. Louis. we don't, when MLS was coming forward and they said, well, why didn't you talk to the county? Well, they did talk to the county, but nobody wanted to embarrass the county executive. So why didn't you do this? Well, nobody wants to do it because they had the 15 votes. That's how we do things in St. Louis. We do things behind the scenes. We wrap up our votes. We think we can push things through, and then we worry about the details later. Well, the details in this Scottrade situation matter. They're now going to be litigated in court. We have at least 2 lawsuits right now. I think there will ultimately be more. If the lawsuit filed by Eric Beef and John Amon on behalf of Kara Spencer, Jim Wilson, and Jeanette Oxford, if that lawsuit is at all successful, i.e. at least goes forward without being dismissed, then I think ultimately the Blues are going to file another lawsuit making the argument that is implied in your question about Darlene Green, in which they say, wait a minute, the Board of Aldermen passed this thing. We started spending all this money. You guys owe it to us. And so I think this thing's going to be caught up in a legal battle. And what I hope happens is that it brings a laser focus to the problem we have in St. Louis, i.e. our city and our county being divided, i.e. we don't have a regional sports authority, and i.e. our public officials are far more willing to spend money on sports stadiums than they are solving crime or dealing with poverty.
Yeah. Is the Kara Spencer lawsuit, are they, I'm confused by that, are they against Darlene Green or are they in support of Darlene Green?
They are ultimately, I believe, in support of Darlene Green, although that's not the particular legal issue. What they are saying is that the ordinance that was passed by the city is unconstitutional because it basically calls for the city to give about $140 million to a private entity, the Blues, and the Missouri Constitution doesn't allow that. What is at issue in that particular lawsuit, there are a variety of issues, but the primary issue in that lawsuit is whether or not the Scottrade Center is actually a public building owned by the city of St. Louis.
Yeah, that's interesting, too, because it's owned by, supposedly, I was always taught or learned, that it was owned by the city, but the Blues have, like, the rights to it or something, right? They have the lease on
right.
it.
Right. And in practicality, what the lawsuit argues, based on the 1992 lease, is that all of that money is going directly to the Blues, that the city, in functioning reality, doesn't own that building.
What wasn't the money that was funded by this? Wasn't that part of? Was it Proposition 1 that passed the voters?
No. This is all general revenue. This is one of the interesting things that I don't think was made clear during the debate. The Scottrade proposal, as it relates to the use of general revenue tax dollars, is a significantly worse proposal than the MLS soccer proposal. The soccer proposal would have used the money from the use tax that got raised in, I believe it was Proposition 1.
Right.
All of the numbers and letters at
right.
election together for me. But that would have used use tax, which is, business tax money for the MLS stadium. That's actually a better bit of public policy than using general revenue tax dollars, which is what ultimately Scottrade is going to do.
And all this leaves the Blues sort of out there dangling in the wind. They got a season coming up. They got concerts scheduled for the middle of September. This is shaping up to be a real disaster.
It could be. I mean, my expectation is they already started the work. They were committed to the work. I think the Blues are going to do the work that, at least in the early phases, they've got a season. They've got to be prepared. They're going to do the work. The ultimate debate is going to be over that $150 million over 30 years, who's ultimately paying for it. That's going to be the question that we're debating. I don't believe this is going to be a matter of stopping the work. None of the lawsuits seek to stop the work. It's a matter of who ultimately is going to pay for it.
Yeah. Tony Messenger, we'll read about it in the Post, and we'll hear about it here, STLtoday.com, and Tuesdays and Thursdays with you. Tony, thanks for checking in.
Good to talk to you.
8:28, Big 550.